Designing XR products is not a sprint race, but a marathon. And the path to creating something that truly changes the way we interact with future devices in this world requires patience, determination, perseverance, and a clear vision. If we look at history, it took decades for computers to become mainstream. The first commercially successful computers were introduced in the 50s, but it wasn't until 80s and 90s that personal computers found their way into homes and offices worldwide. I believe XR is on a similar trajectory. We are still on early stages, building the foundation. One of the #1 reasons people leave is because I'm Danilo Parise, and I'm a design leader with over 20 years of experience creating user-centered digital solutions. And my career began as a motion designer at Sky, where I led branding projects for multiple TV networks and expanding audience reach and building customer loyalty. And this passion for impactful design led me to establish this Angel Sign Studio, my own motion design, branding, and experiential agency. And we collaborated with global broadcaster and exploring creative technology, motion design, animation, and interaction design, which laid the foundation for my work in immersive tech. Then I moved to London. I joined Microsoft, and I led the design effort for Windows Mixed Reality Viewer, which is the foundational application and engine for all the Windows-based devices, including HoloLens. And we pioneered 3D authoring tools, enabling probably for the first time in history, millions of people worldwide to create 3D content and interact with holograms. At Vodafone, I helped drive a multi-year global digital transformation plan, aiming to unify design guidelines and user experience strategies across markets, working on mobile, desktop, digital retail, and AI-driven solution. Then again, we impacted millions of users worldwide. Most recently at HTC Vive, I focused on providing creative and design leadership on enterprise solution as global creative director, and I help push the interaction boundaries of immersive experiences for enterprise clients, while also, of course, launching new generation of headsets and again, delivering this product to global markets. At the moment, I'm currently working on my startup, working on my own IPs, and with the broader goal of converging XR and AI under the same umbrella for immersive applications. Ultimately, what I'm very, very passionate about is how design and product thinking can shape the future of digital application. And I'm very, very excited today to share some of the learnings, some of the mistakes and insights I gathered through this journey, so that can help you build what you're going to create next. Let's jump to the first slide. This first slide aims to lay the foundation for my approach nowadays for XR application and XR design. And as I think it addressed one of the key misconceptions about immersive experiences. 3D interaction is easy for people as it mimics real life interactions. This is a full statement for me. And if you look at it at a first glance, the statement might seem logical. After all, XR environments are looking to replicate physical spaces and objects. Therefore, users should intuitively know how to interact with them, right? But matter is, via design, we put tremendous effort to simplify our physical worlds with the goal of not overwhelming user and simplify our lifestyles. But as Don Norman highlighted in the design of everyday things, even the simplest real-world objects require learning. And for making an example, a teapot may scald your hand if designed poorly, and a door might baffle you if the handles give misleading cues. So, in other words, what helps us navigating these challenges is the continuous onboarding and discovery inherent to our living, which means naturally we learn through experience, observation, and trial and error. And all of this is by learning and engaging with the function of every physical object and every physical space by iterating with actions. If you think to even more complex tools that we use on everyday life, like a washing machine or a Hoover or a reflex camera, more than often those come with a manual to understand how to operate. And if we make a parallel with XR, this challenge is truly magnified. We are crafting entirely new interaction paradigms in an environment that lacks centuries of human learning. And also sensory information like touch, smell, that users rely on a daily basis with the physical world. A virtual teapot doesn't have the heft or temperature cues that suggest how to handle it. And a digital door might lack visual affordances like hinges or rays that signals where it slides, swings, or even dissolves to pixels. XR introduces complexity that goes far beyond replicating reality, and it demands the user to learn completely new paradigms and the following the flexibility versus usability trade-off. As the flexibility of interaction increases, the usability of the system decreases. All of this, of course, has implication in the way we design XR products, and fully body immersion represents both an opportunity and a challenge. And this is where effective design gives us a true opportunity to simplify the immersive experience at the core, to make sure that users are not overwhelmed. What I learned is to look at things with the eye of a child that has to learn about a new object or a new topic, which means grounding the taxonomy to the base level, reduce ambiguity, simplify the affordances, provide hierarchical guidance to the user. As designers, we have the responsibility to create experiences that deliver tangible value, and it's not enough to deliver something that just works without seeking full user embodiment. Moving to the next slide, this is all about defining the problem. So define the problem as clearly as you can, then validate it with your grant. I believe that identifying the core problem you're solving and validating it with real users early in the process is critically critical. This ensures you're addressing the right needs while keeping the focus on what it matters. And of course, this statement might sound a little bit provocative, but it highlights one of the most common mistakes people make when tackling new concepts. And this is true both for XR, but also for common and traditional devices. To really fail in articulating the problem that you're looking to solve and assume that the solution is inherently intuitive and straightforward. Oftentimes, I saw the problem statement already as well articulating the solution, aiming to capitalize on the technological features rather than emphasizing with a user behavior or need. So defining the problem is the foundation of effective design thinking. And without a clear understanding of what we are solving, we risk wasting time, effort, and resources. But where do we start? It's all about creating a clear, concise, user-led problem statement. So a strong problem statement answers the famous 5 key questions. Who is experiencing the issue? What is the problem that they are facing? When and where does it occur? And why does it matter? And these questions ensure we focus on the users and their core needs. Problem statement should describe the gap between where we are now to where we want to be, and not how we bridge the gap in the middle. And also it's important that we strike the right balance between how we can make the problem broad enough to inspire a range of new approaches during ideation, but also focused enough to keep the team aligned on what is important. And it's very tempting to skip ahead of the solution. And I think on the other hand, what is very important is that once we define the problem, it's worth exploring if the XR domain can contribute to solving it. So while considering the problem, think about the XR unique capabilities like spatial interaction, conversational feedback, digital twin, context-aware overlays, whatever you're planning to do with your application. I also think if a similar digital application on traditional devices would be a good alternative. And this is the right moment to make a call if your solution really requires XR to address the core problem we identified earlier. Finally, let's validate the problem statement. And here, as I was mentioning, I suggest a simple but effective test. Try to explain to your grant, which is another way of identifying another user, someone outside your context. Because these people represent someone that doesn't know anything about what you're looking to create. So it doesn't have any understanding of your background and your experiences that you're contextualizing with the solution you're creating. So if you have done your job well, the person will be understanding clearly the solution you're aiming to create. And your project will be truly clear, actionable, and focused on the end user. Ultimately, I think this process isn't just about writing a statement, but it's about setting the stage for the entire design and development journey. A well-defined problem ensures that the solution that you generate later is set to solve the correct pain points and delivers a meaningful experience. This next slide wants to talk about guidelines. Still, their headaches, study design guidelines. And this is all about making sure you familiarize yourself with design-like guidelines from major players like Apple, Meta, Microsoft, Snapchat, among the others. And they offer established principles and patterns to build user-friendly and consistent experiences in XR. And I can see many reasons why it is important going down to this approach. So to start, from a technical perspective, these guidelines are often closely tied with developer libraries. And what does this mean for you is that you will be aligned with what is technically feasible and viable, as these guidelines often are baked up with ready-to-use library or APIs that are optimized for the platform, saving you engineering time and development. Secondly, understanding these guidelines gives you a clear sense of opportunities and constraints of the hardware and the software of the platform you are designing against. What can this specific headset handle well? What are the limitations? These insights help you focus your energy on solving real user problems while avoiding pitfalls or the head ends caused by technical limitation. And thirdly, working with these guidelines lets you design user experiences mechanics more efficiently. So instead of starting from scratch, you're building on a foundation of proven principles. And now comes the interesting part. As you work with these guidelines, you'll eventually find gaps. Of course, there will be areas where the documentation doesn't quite address your unique scenario. And these gaps aren't obstacles. I consider them opportunities because they represent springboard for innovation where you can really push the boundaries and create something unique, something bespoke that really and truly adds value to the guidelines that haven't yet anticipated. So the idea of stealing their headaches is all about being essentially strategic. You're not copying, you're learning, you're evolving. You are aligning your product with established best practices while saving engineering time and effort. And at the same time, you're setting yourself up to innovate intelligently, knowing exactly where to invest time and effort for bespoke solutions. Moving to the next slide, and this is something very dear to me, is depth is the new uncharted hierarchy framework. So adding a new dimension to the digital experience enhances the understanding of traditional design layout hierarchies. And this is to accommodate the user within spatial application. And the key advice here is to use depth to guide focus and emphasize key interaction, but also make sure that elements are displayed on the Z-axis in a way that don't confuse the users. So if we make a parallel with traditional digital interface, and here we work within a flat linear hierarchies, menus, tabs, cards, call to action, and we guide the user step by step following a very flat mental model, which is very easy for humans to comprehend and to master. But XR introduces a profound shift in understanding this alternative context, often adding weight on the cognitive load of information. So that's why I consider that not just as spatial features, but an entirely new interaction framework where users can navigate and interact with layers of information, action, and experiences characterized by the freedom of movement. And in this new scenario, imagine menus and overlays, 3D objects, they are not anymore confined to screens or floating windows, but exist dynamically in the environment. So make sure that you're mindful, because when you have a lot of flexibility, that flexibility of navigating, interacting with that space comes at the cost of usability. And I think we as designers, we must approach this new variable with caution. Because depth offers freedom, but freedom might create the condition to overpopulate the framework with too many elements. If interaction and content are scattered without a clear structure, users quickly face cognitive overload and disorientation. In other words, they lose the ability to build a mental model of the space they are living, making the experience frustrating rather than empowering. This is why I consider very critical to always define clear rules on how depth plays a role into the spatial interaction framework. Affordances and visual cues need to be placed intentionally, creating a logic that guides the use naturally through this element. Where you're going to position the most critical information and why is over there. Where should secondary interactions sit? And so that they are easy to find, but at the same time, they don't feel overwhelming. Predictable design patterns and intuitive placement are your tools for tuning depth from a source of confusion into a source of clarity. which means, in other words, turning depth into your secret ally to improve engagement and discovery. So in conclusion, dealing with depth is not about cramming in as many elements, as many new factor in, but more like crafting a cohesive hierarchy regulated by meaningful categorization, where user can prioritize, navigate, and interact seamlessly. And my suggestion is that balancing the richness of depth with the clarity of design is where we have the opportunity to really and truly unlock the potential of XR, which means, again, to deliver meaningful experiences that are not only immersive, but also intuitive and transformative. Next slide is all about thinking your product like a game, but plan it as a mobile app. So adopt game-like principle of exploration and discovery while maintaining the simplicity and clarity of mobile design, of course, with a sharp focus on our objective-oriented experiences. These two key parameters, discovery and goals, should guide your approach. Allow users to enjoy the journey of discovery, tap into their curiosity and desire to explore. At the same time, ensure that their path to achieving clear, meaningful goals is well-defined and intuitive. And this balance becomes particularly critical in XR, in my opinion, where the richness of embodiment can really turn into an overwhelming factor if not carefully directed. XR offers unparalleled opportunities for explorations by immersing users into environments and tap into their innate curiosity, which is a fundamental driver of human behavior, as well described by Berlin's theory of curiosity. However, for exploration to be meaningful, it must be also purpose-driven, as Locke's Latham goal-setting theory emphasizes. Users engage most deeply when their exploration is anchored to clear and achievable objectives. So by combining this principle, you can really craft experiences that are not only immersive, but also purposeful and satisfying, ensuring users feel both inspired and accomplished.
Hello, you are watching a free video on our XR Mentor series here on YouTube. We have 12 videos planned for this. We will upload them on a weekly basis, so 12 weeks. If you want to access all of them immediately and for free, then feel free to check out our Immersive Insiders platform. We have it linked above and in the description. You can also access to our community and all of that stuff, so there's a bunch of cool things going on. Feel free to check it out and enjoy the video.
In XR application, users typically have goal-oriented purposes, like learning a skill, completing a task, or accessing information. And it's clear that here the focus is efficiency and utility. Users need intuitive pathway to achieve their objectives, with discovery enhancing engagement, but never obstructing their primary goal. Let's make an example. I'm sure you guys are familiar with the Pencil app that teaches drawing by overlapping augmented step-by-step guidance on the physical paper. It combines structured learning with the freedom of exploring the creative skills. And this demonstrates how discovery and direction can really coexist in an application that delivers value. In XR games, discovery takes the center stage instead. Think about a game like Assassin's Creed Nexus, which thrives because they immerse players in a cycle of exploration, reward, and achievement, leveraging dopamine-driven feedback loops that keep the user engaged. However, even in games, achieving satisfaction requires structure. Assassin's Creed excels by blending immersive freedom, like moving and battling with different enemies, with achieving targets, like delivering mission, unlock the next story levels, and this ensures the players stay engaged and motivated. What I'm picturing is that both these two examples illustrate varying degrees of emphasis on the two of the mentioned factor, and the distinction lies in the intent. Application prioritize efficiency and utility, while games focus on engagement and satisfaction. So for us as XR creator, we must adopt tailored approaches for each scenario, and ultimately XR experiences must offer more than immersion. They must be able to create emotional value while delivering user delight. Whether users are mastering a skill with Pencil or achieving the next level of Assassin's Creed Nexus, our role as XR designers is to balance freedom with intentionality. Moving to the next slide, nailing user input is half of the success. And oftentimes I see this as an afterthought, just after all the other features have been planned and developed. What I can say is that one of the #1 reasons people leave is because they find it very difficult to do the most basic actions in the digital environment, like navigating the environment or even triggering a menu. So inputs are the main vehicle through which users engage with the experience, transforming the intent into the action and eventually with engagement. When user inputs create friction, they break the spell, cutting user completely off from the application you have built. And the result is that frustration kills the experience at its core. So if this is hard to imagine, let me draw a little parallel, like unlocking a door in real life. You grab the key, you insert it, you turn it, and the door is open. And that is second nature. You don't think about the mechanics. It's just an act that you do naturally. But imagine if the key doesn't fit smoothly and the lock sticks and the key even breaks. Suddenly, a very simple, familiar action becomes a source of frustration and delay. And worse yet, it blocks the entry of the next word altogether, turning wonder into irritation. So nailing user input is half of the success isn't just a principle. It's a lifeline for immersion via multiple paths. XR gives the opportunity to really serve different audiences moved by different behaviors, and we have the amazing opportunity to leverage multimodal capabilities in your solution, like gesture, voice, gaze, and controllers. And all of this offers the user the option to prioritize which methods fit their abilities most. Therefore, plan, design, and test secondary and tertiary inputs for further accessibility. As mentioned, user input in XR, whether they're gestural, voice-based, or controller-driven, must feel intuitive and precise. When user reaches an object to grab, they expect the system and the whole responsiveness to be as natural as possible as they were grabbing something in the real life. Or for example, when they look at a menu option, they expect gaze or hand gesture to select those options with precision. And you must think this not just as a functionality, but about fostering trust and flow. If users sense hesitation or inaccuracy in the system, it forces them to think about the tool rather than the experience. Moreover, input XR must prioritize comfort and minimize fatigue, and this is achieved by placing commands in accessible location and designing information architectures that avoid repetitive actions and ensure seamless and efficient user interactions. Therefore, consider user input as more than a technical layer, as the foundation for a deeper emotional connection and engagement in XR. A system that gets this right and really and truly empower users, but one that gets this wrong leaves them locked out, as the example before, unable to fully make them unable to enter and engage with the world you just created. The next slide is all about the physical environment. The physical environment is your new canvas. Go and explore it, which also means stop thinking about screens and start designing truly for spaces. And those are now considered part of the immersive experiences. And this shift fundamentally changed how we must think about the user experience, the cognition, and interaction design. From a cognitive perspective, humans have an innate understanding of spatial environment. Our brains are wired to navigate and process the physical world through spatial memory and embodied cognition, which in other words means that we live experiences not only through our mind, but also through our bodies in relation to space. And in mixed reality, this becomes a powerful tool as we now have the opportunity to transcend the full virtual immersion, as we are now able to anchor digital experiences in the real world, elevating the perception of it. For the first time in history, humans can superpower the environment, transforming it into something more novel, supernatural, and even more dynamic. And to digress this further, consider the studies of the myth of Orloshi, or also called the memory place technique, a framework thanks to which individual remembers information by associating information with physical location. And to me, this speaks volume on how we can naturally anchor knowledge, emotions, intents with the physical world, with spatial context. And we, again, as XR designers, we can harness this principle by placing digital interaction that enhance our fruition of the physical world and leveraging walls, ceiling, furniture, but also outdoor and urban environment, which becomes like a blank canvas of new digital opportunities for human empowerment. Digital immersion redefines physical spaces, enabling infinite version of the same place with digital enhancement, allowing users to engage with digital elements as they were real, as XR taps into kinesthetic learning, one of the most effective ways to absorb and retain knowledge. Moreover, mixed reality amplifies the emotional and behavioral impact of spaces, as environmental psychology teaches us that spaces we occupy deeply influence our behaviors, our emotion, and even, of course, our productivity. Imagine how you could transform and enhance your DIY room with physical tools, with physical digital overlays, or step-by-step augmented guides, empowering your creativity and your efficiency. Or in a studio music room where XR transforms such environment into a dynamic creative hub overlaying virtual music learning tools, or immersive sound visualization that enhance the played instrument and the sharing of such melodies. Therefore, stop thinking about screens as they've been flattening our reality. They limit not only the real estate interaction, but also the dimension of our thinking. And the XR makes the physical world our canvas, blending digital and physical in a way that is giving the form to environments that refine how we as humans interact with each other, and more broadly, how we can truly interact with the world that surrounds us. Next slide, I want to talk a little bit about AI. There is no spatial design without AI. IXR is here to stay. And let's unpack this statement. The dawn of AI, I think, has revolutionized, and we all agree, has revolutionized the approach of XR technology. And this statement reflects the inseparable, in my opinion, relationship between artificial intelligence and extended realities, and culminates in what I define intelligent XR, or IXR, which enables and accelerates the feature and interaction within spatial computing. I think AI is not merely a support tool. It is an engine driving conceptual depth, adaptability, and personalization of spatial experiences. And without it, spatial design would lack the intelligence and responsiveness needed to thrive. And I just want to make another parallel here, like imagine navigating a city without a GPS that adjusts to traffic or personal preferences. Of course, it's possible, but inefficient and probably frustrating. And similarly, spatial design without AI feels static, clumsy, unable to adapt to user behavior, or the environmental context too, not really able to create that tangible, immediate value to users. And AI transforms space into dynamic ecosystem. It can detect patterns, predict user needs, support user inputs, while ultimately delivering highly contextualized real-time interaction, elevating the immersion and the human technological empowerment. As I mentioned, AI powers the heart of IXR as it enables responsive environments that recognize and adapt to human input while delivering extra value. And in this chart, we can see different scenarios in which the two technologies interplay, where AI supports XR and vice versa. AI can truly serve XR, from real-time voice processing with natural language processing to predictive task optimization with machine learning. And you can see AI clearly elevates the usability and delivery of spatial design. On the other hand, XR enables AI for further empowerment and long-term evolution of this technology. And for instance, let's consider XR and spatial vision and how this can be enabled and how AI can enable to collect, process, and refine data in fields like healthcare, manufacturing, education, training, you name it, to generate insight that expand XR scope and accessibility. Essentially, through AI, XR becomes not only a tool for immersion, but also an adaptive system that accelerates knowledge gathering and delivery. In the end, AI is the linchpin that transforms XR into IXR. In other words, a personalized, intelligent, and scalable medium. As AI and XR continues to integrate, IXR will not just remain, but it will redefine how we live, work, and interact in the digital and physical spaces. As we move on from the principle of designing for XR, I want to spend a couple of slides about execution and curve so that can become helpful for the solution that you're creating. So let's talk about how we turn ideas into impactful solutions. Start small and prove the concept for scale. And let me be very frank and direct. Of course, the execution phase is where the magic happens, but also where things can go really off track if you're not strategic. One of the most common mistakes I see teams make is the temptation to overly add features, thinking that more options equate to more value or interest for the product. But in practice, this often leads to complexity, resource strain, and a diluted experience that fails to address the core problem we mentioned earlier. Instead, successful execution means focusing sharply on two or three key features that truly bring the solution to life. And these are the features that directly address the main problem we identified at the beginning of this process and this conversation we are having today. The features that user will immediately see, feel, and find value in. Think of these critical features as the foundation, enabling you to iterate faster and receive feedback. This is very pivotal. By starting small, with clear priorities, you create a minimum viable product that's not just functional, it's proving the potential of the XR, but also, more importantly, is becoming even more meaningful for the users. These early wins are essential because they prove the concept, but also they provide a springboard for your growth. Whether it's an intuitive interaction model, a groundbreaking use of XR mechanics, or an AI-powered feature that simplify a task, these features must resonate immediately with users, solving their pain points in a way that feels seamless and impactful. On the other side, this approach also ensures that every hour and dollar spent is working towards scalability. So cut out any unnecessary elements and simplify the development, and this will lead you to create a more elegant and refined product that can adapt and expand over time. And in the long run, starting small isn't about thinking small. It's about laying the groundwork for bigger opportunities. Think about it. Each iteration builds trust, solves problems, and opens the door for more ambitious goals, setting your project up for sustainable growth and ultimately broader success. Continuing our journey with execution and growth, I want to talk about one of the most defining aspects of any design and creative journey, the constraints. Your uninvited design partner. Far from being barriers, these challenges act as a springboard for your creativity, sharpening your focus and push to deliver truly impactful experiences. Let's start with product market fit, which I think is a very, very important constraint that you need to look into. Understanding the market for your game or application obviously is critical, but as well, the reality is that success often comes from iteration. So by deploying and testing, you might discover that user expect something entirely or slightly different from what you envision. And this can be frustrating because it's something that doesn't belong to you and something that you hadn't envisioned, steering you to rethink your application or even pivot towards solutions you hadn't considered. But in this way, user feedback becomes a set of guardrails, grounding your creative freedom with the real-world insight, ensuring your product resonates with the people who matter the most, meaning your users. Then there is the impact of the evolving technologies. As XR tools and platform advance, so the ambition of what can be built advanced sideways. But this advancement come anyway with new technological and technical challenges, deployment hurdles, something that you might have not considered earlier. And this can be very frustrating, and although I consider these opportunities in disguise, because they push you to expand your knowledge into areas you might have not felt comfortable before, whether optimizing performance, integrating new hardware, or streamlining workflow. And in all this process of learning, what is really happening is that this learning makes you a more versatile professional. And finally, let's address something very common in the emerging XR industry, which by definition is a niche market, low budget. It's easy to feel that a lack of resources limits what you can achieve, but the truth is constraints like this really sharpen your problem-solving skills. With fewer options, you're forced to think critically and define what truly matters, focusing on delivering the highest impact with the simplest, most elegant solution as clarity drives execution. Therefore, ultimately constraints are a setback. They are signposts guiding you to think differently, to iterate, and to grow. And by learning these challenges, you do not only refine your craft, but also transform your limitation into stepping stones for innovation. As we transition from execution and growth to long-term planning, I think it's crucial to ground on the XR industry trajectory. Great products don't sell themselves. And we can all reckon that this domain, the XR industry, is still in its infancy, presenting us a dual challenge, creating groundbreaking experiences while also educating users about their value. XR is truly exciting and full of potential, but it's not yet second nature for most people. And to succeed, we must make our solution usable, accessible, most important, desirable, bridging the gap between novelty and necessity. And in today's world, where users are bombarded with digital signals 24/7, cutting through the noise is an art form. And it takes much more than just creating a great product. It requires an effective go-to-market strategy that guides your product from an initial MVP stage to something inspirational, making people genuinely want to use, explore, and advocate for. And central to this is product storytelling, which also means the art of framing your solution with a compelling narrative. A good story grabs attention, and while novel features may draw initial curiosity, it's the narrative that ensures people remember and connect with your product, covering why your product exists, the problem it solves, and the lives it transforms. I want to make a parallel here, something I'm sure you guys are familiar with. Let's make an example with Figma. Its success isn't just about its features as a design tool. Figma narrative is rooted in connection and collaboration. Traditional tools focus narrowly on creation. Figma instead redefined what it means to be a design platform, positioning itself as a shared workspace that unites every actor in the development process, from designers, developers, product managers, and probably beyond. And this narrative shifts the Figma perception from being just a better tool to becoming an indispensable system for modern product development. So when creating your narrative, make sure your product is the hero and make sure that you highlight its unquestionable value. Show the transformation it enables and the potential it unlocks. And by doing so, you're not just selling a product, you're building a legacy and inviting your audience to be part of this journey of yours. And with the right narrative, XR experiences can transcend the challenges of a nascent industry, becoming not just usable, but essential. So we arrived almost at the end of this conversation, and I want to close the lecture with something very important to keep an eye on and to have that in your pocket. Designing XR products is not a sprint race, but a marathon. And the path to creating something that truly changes the way we interact with future devices in this world requires patience, determination, perseverance, and a clear vision. And it's all about balancing with the reality of where the technology stands today and, of course, its adoption. I spent many years in the industry, and I've witnessed three major waves of XR hype coinciding with the releases of HoloLens 1, the Meta rebrand, and the most recent Vision Pro launch. And each wave represented for me a roller coaster of emotion. On one side, they reinforced my passion for this space and the transformative potential of XR, often making me feel like burned by the fear of missing out. Other times, I felt like everything was moving too slowly and that the breakthrough we all expected and we envisioned would take far longer than expected. But then I reminded myself that this is the rhythm of the technological evolution. If we look at history, it took decades for computers to become mainstream. The first commercially successful computers were introduced in the 50s, but it wasn't until 80s and 90s that personal computers found their way into homes and offices worldwide. And similarly, mobile phones. Those were introduced in the 80s, but it took nearly 30 years of innovation, miniaturization, and network expansion before smartphones became ubiquitous. I believe XR is on a similar trajectory, and although we have on our show those long years of experimentation and validation, we are still on early stages, building the foundation. And as the hardware progressing, our job as XR designers is to find those meaningful use cases that truly resonate with people on a personal and practical level. Every revolutionary product requires years of research, followed by years of user adaptation, and even more years of widespread adoption. So my last suggestion for you is to keep a balanced perspective. Ambition is vital to drive innovation, but it's equally important to stay grounded in the current state of the industry. Understand the challenges, set realistic expectation, because all of this is not about winning a sprint, but it's all about building the future step by step until XR is no longer just a technology buzz, but an invisible integration in our everybody's life. So this concludes my presentation. Of course, if you want to talk with me further about all of this, feel free to reach out. What you see on screen are basically the topics and disciplines I mainly cover in my expertise. I'm very excited for all of you to have the opportunity to experiment and validate your thinking into this field. So thank you very much for listening, and hoping to hear your question and your feedback.
Thank you so much for this lecture. I mean, the amount of the information that you shared with us is just next level. I cannot tell you. It's going to help almost the 100+ people who are joined today, and later people who are going to watch the recording. It's going to be really, really helpful for them. So this is super cool. All right, so we will open up for chat for the next 10-15 minutes, and then you can see the chat on the right side, and you can just read out, and then we highlight it on the screen as well. Okay, so here we have one. I want to hear about yeah, I don't know how to pronounce this, Scudophosium in XR, and how to evolve past in it are design consideration.
That's a very good question. Thanks for asking. I can relate to this in the early years of my experimentation at Microsoft. Actually, my thinking when we were planning some of the experiences in the solution that we were experimenting, my thinking would have targeting skillful medium as the next evolution of interaction in XR, in virtual reality and augmented reality, because affordances will replicate what we can see in real life. But then I realized that that approach was determining few issues. First and foremost, the speed of deployment. Because in a commercial environment, I think it's very important to deliver fast and create something where you can test. So that was going much against how much we were able to deliver at pace. So if from one side, from a user perspective, I would say, yeah, that's the thing to do, because then people are more inclined to understand and learn interaction of that specific button or interface that you were creating. On the other hand, that was creating a friction in how fast we could deliver the solution. And the threshold in there was like, okay, so let's try to bring in the minimal affordance that replicate a physical environment into the digital context without sacrificing basically the speed of delivery. So in other words, what I'm saying is that I think there's an element of importance in that, but also you need to face how quickly you are able to deliver and test what works and what's not. Hope that answered your question. Coldfish is asking, I wonder what is your idea to make XR necessary for life? Wow, that's a very very deep question. What can be necessary? I think necessity comes from research and investigation. I think if you want to find something that is meaningful for the user, I think you really need to study them and research in their behaviors. I think that becomes the driver for the technology to become mainstream. I don't think it's the other way around. So start from user behavior, start from their core needs, start from the immediate problem they want to solve, and try to think how the XR capabilities can unlock true value and true meaning to those people. Otherwise, we are always falling in the same trap of just showcasing features because the technology is cool, rather than truly understanding how humans behave in their world. What's your tips in launching an XR product? Well, that's from Adam. Thanks for that question. I think I try to cover a lot of that in this lecture. I think as a human, as a person, I think be ambitious, but be also grounded, because I think XR, it's a very, very exciting, and when you start experiencing yourself this technology, it truly feels magical, something that really belongs to movies. But at the same time, it's like launching a new product means like a lot of resilience and a lot of determination to make it happen. And making sure that these two aspects are going in parallel in your approach and your development of the product is probably one of the key elements to take consideration of. How to figure out what's the right problem to solve in XR. That's a good question, Manikant. Okay, so I think for making sure that the market is valuable, what I can suggest is go through again from research. I think nowadays online you can find tons of information, also academic or specialized report on how a certain market is behaving, what is their CAGR compound growth. I think that gives you at least an understanding, because of course those are information that are key for your evaluation, but of course come from the internet, so they're not often that deep unless you buy those researchers report. I think starting from that is an option, and then being brutal in asking to people that you want to target what they think about it. I think that's the starting point for you to validate and test your assumption of the market. Speaking with people directly in a very direct way, try to even stop people that you think that those are your target user. Ask them question about your solution, and eventually, if those are not the people, ask your friends if they know someone that can relate to your solution and start making questions. So build your network in finding the right target audience and test your assumption is that those are right. And then that's also an opportunity to eventually pivot or adjust your solution so that it really matches the market that you're targeting. What is for you the reason majority of recent XR hardware have not sell well, like the Apple one?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Marco. I think there are several factors for that. I think at the moment there are two main downsides in the current headset. The first one is comfort. I think comfort and accessibility, I think the two go hand in hand. I still think like headset still heavy and bulky, and this precludes people to wear them naturally, like switching on, switching off a mobile phone for making you understand. I think this is something that has to be resolved, and I'm sure you guys have seen technological advancement that big players are presenting, like Ryan glasses and also other brands in different parts of the world. They are pushing the envelope in trying to miniaturize the form factor. I think this element is very critical for adoption. And the other thing is definitely price. There's obviously an effort to lower down the barrier of price and cost, but I don't think we are still there yet. Of course, the effort in decreasing cost on 300 is a noble effort, but I still think that for the majority of the people, if we want this to be mainstream, the cost should be a little bit more affordable. And these two parameters go again hand in hand: accessibility, form factor, and cost. What are your thoughts on if XR designers should experiment with the possibility of XR, maybe even with the cost of not following UX principle, kind of teaching user to new ways of doing things that is possible in XR but not in real life or 2D? This is something I tested myself, not following UX principles or following design guidelines, because I think UX principle and design guidelines, they are established because they really want to speed up and ground the user experience on something meaningful. I think not following UX principle implicitly make your development time longer, I think, because you're basically trying to reinvent the wheel all the time. And you're not grounding with something substantial and something already shared in the industry, unless you want to create something completely different. You have a groundbreaking idea, you are the next unicorn, something that nobody has thought yet, then probably is the moment where you want to create new design principle, UX principles. But I think we live in a world where things get iterated rather than have a complete novelty factor. So I would be considerate in pursuing a direction that doesn't have principle, doesn't follow principle. So be careful on going through that path. Would love to know more about your thoughts on the intersection of AI and XR. AI is a huge topic, and building for XR is also large. How would you suggest people to experiment with AI without having to build their own LLMs? It is just limited to text-wise responses, or do you see other ways to explore this concept? Okay, thanks for the question. This is something very dear to me because I am very keen to explore similar domain. I think, and this is more a message for the broader industry, I think there's a massive opportunity in prototyping for AI and conversational agents. I don't think at the moment in the XR industry there is a prototyping tool that really pushed the envelope in experimenting and validating thinking in such space. So what I've been doing is trying to build conversational trees myself and put them, for example, in ShapesXR, and try to narrate the experience through the voice of AI, eventually with a different person connected elsewhere, and try to see if that would make sense, if that solution would make sense thanks to not only the XR environment, but also thanks to the AI agent supporting the solution. But that was basically hardwired. So I created the script and I basically tried to showcase the whole conversation just by basically navigating through the slide. I would suggest a similar approach, or if you are a more technical person, probably the other tool that I've seen that can help you a little bit with that is a Copilot Studio, but it gets a little bit more technical and more intricate. So, and it's more talking with people that really want to explore deeply this topic. So, what I'm trying to say, try to find your ways to make some tests and validate your assumption and be creative. I think there's always an opportunity for you to test and experiment in innovative ways. It's just, open your mind to the solution and to the opportunities and see what sticks and what can make you progress in your experimentation and in your validation journey.
For XR designer, what is the balance between reusing already existing XR design principles from other apps and companies and innovating the design? Like what if you want to create a new technology of your own?
I think I partly responded to this question earlier. I think, and also I tried to cover this in the presentation. I think it's start from the design guidelines and from established big players, and then find your sweet spot for innovation. I think that for me is a learning as well, because I always try to think, okay, what's the next thing? What's the future of digital interaction? What is the next XR interface that enables users to do A, B, and C? But I realized that this approach was a little bit detrimental when talking with engineers. And the other misconception is that design is always very creative and very much focused on the user need. But what I also realized that more than often, also engineers have user in their mind, but from a different perception, from a different perspective. So I think you can experiment with something completely new, completely novel, but start from something that is already grounded and already developed, because it will be very much fostering your trust in the deployment and the implementation environment, but also will give you the opportunity to really broaden up your space and credibility in the tiny spot where you really need to innovate.
For me as a developer, when I saw that Meta has given a set of UI that we can use out of the box, I was quite happy with it because I don't have to sit and design all the UI from scratch. I can just drag and drop and change the background colors and transparency and things like that. So I think for me, it's really helpful to just reuse and not think about it. Yeah. All right. So I know a lot of you have a questions, but we're going to respect our mentor's time here. So I'm sorry if your answers went unanswered. Probably we can write it down once the recording goes live on the website, probably you can write down your questions there. And when Dan is free, maybe he will answer it for us. So thank you so much, Dan, for taking your time and giving us this wonderful lecture. And I'm pretty sure this information was very helpful for us. And yeah, have a nice day. And thank you everyone, audience, for joining in and taking your time also to listen in. And I hope you gain some knowledge as well.